Recording is on. Okay, so hobos. Anybody has got any thoughts on this?
Well, I think the hobos weren't they around during the times of the Depression in the late 20s and early 30s? And maybe I'm incorrect, but I just see that as a more innocent time when, um, yeah, I don't know. I'm just thinking that what Yusi said about now, everyone, a lot of people have guns, have weapons, and a lot of people are suspicious about each other. So perhaps in I don't know if it can still be possible, but it it does sound great about the spontaneous sprouting of assistance to each other, like in an anarchy setup where there are no leaders, nothing is planned. But yeah, I'm just thinking that it was in a different time of history when there was not so many paranoid ideas about people who are different from you.
Yeah, I like what A said there, and for the states at least, I agree. We have, and it may be different for other people here, but the amount of weaponry and the situation with people in the states is pretty frightening. But the idea of so what is a hobo? What defines that group, if you might call it a community? It's a set of like kind of culture, operating ethics, and practices that allowed them to kind of move and live, survive. And what's interesting to me is I see that actually springing up all around me with, a little bit of kind of a weird pseudo leftist resurgence of anarchistic, groups organizing court, although it's complicated. But also with squatters, as the housing crisis in my area has been a big deal, squatting has resurged and become a thing, and there's kind of groups and ethics around that. So, people kind of take to survival groups and create cultures that help them survive. Although, countering that, I think, like A said, at least in the States, the environmental situation, the kind of violent situation is really bad. But the other thing that's, and I think that there's a lot to take from the hobo example and to learn from this. But as A noted, it was during a time of energy and resource abundance. And I think as we see the energy and resource situation, deteriorate, it may or may not be kind of hard to live on the crumbs that fall off the table. It might be really challenging to kind of, live on the fat that the rest of the system produces when it's starving to death. But of course, the approach that hobos took may still offer a lot of interesting insights and the kind of culture they built.
But what I'm interested in is not to repeat something that's already happened in the past, but to see what spontaneously happens when people are deprived of everything, food first, but also jobs and houses and everything, and observing what they do. And it emerges that in a lot of situations, we don't have one of those negative scenarios that you talk about. You don't have those Mad Max or those Hollywood horrors happening and the people shooting around. You've got funny things that emerge, and it's absolutely impossible to know what's going to happen. It's yeah, as you say, well, emergent survival culture, but it's something that you can't study. I think it's something that will happen, and we absolutely don't know what it's going to be. We don't know. And I think doing too much organizing and structuring, and it's bringing us nowhere. It's just we come back to where we are and preparing mentally. And I think we have had in the last 2 years a lot of things to help us. I really was listening to a lot of meetings when I was when I was doing stuff in the house and stuff around, I got time to listen just to the meetings we had. And it's amazing the amount of stuff compared to a lot of other groups that talk about collapse or prepping, which are really limited. I noticed there's very few that cover so many things that we cover um, without sticking to scenarios and to politics and to. I think we're very lucky actually to have come across somebody like you. Of course, we all know that, but to have continued to continue in that direction. It's a great time to be alive.
This is our time. This is what we have. I remember a phrase from a book. It said, there may be more beautiful times, but this one is ours. I don't know who said that. But in any case, I recall one of the earliest videos that Lord Hugh did was, he was trying to explore the things that people normally think about how they can escape, like escape by being rich, escape by going off grid, even the one that he said about the parallel polis where you're going to create a new community. It's not going to happen, like because um, people will come and destroy your community or steal your harvest, whatever. So in the end, what was left in my mind was that what you need are people you can count on, friends that won't betray you, won't let you down. Basically, people who love you. May not be your own family, but he said, try to find good comrades. So I think when I think of community, um, to me that would be the ideal community, is uh, to be connected that way, where you have people um, there whom you can count on.
But I think the community is basically what you're going to fight, what you're going to face when shit hits the fan, wherever you are. So you won't have much. You won't be able to be choosy. You'll have to put up with what's around you, and and that's a bit the background. And I think, well, what the question I was asking you initially is, what are we doing? What have we been doing in our lives? And are we just staying put and observing, or are we making moves and observing around us how people? It was very interesting to see what happened during the pandemic, for example. It was for me anyway. It was very eye-opening on the people around me and the place where I lived and how people reacted and an event like that was a very interesting. And it's actually that during this thing that we had all these meetings that we started all this.
I'm an armchair prepper. I read books about stuff, but my I'm still devoting my time to um, basically working. That's about it. It's I know time is short, and it's kind of really hard to be excited about the goals of the organization.
One thing, and this relates maybe to the meditation conversation from last time, but holy cow, does it make me appreciate right now in all of its ways. And that's been really fantastic. This kind of looming issue puts my focus back on today. But, I think that, yeah, trying to get community and trying to get community people who are trying to be sustainable is pretty helpful. I think one thing that Going South is saying here is interesting. How do you go back to what a lot of people will feel is a more difficult lifestyle? And I think that, yeah, I mean, some people will because there's no alternative. But I'm kind of, I don't know how this is going to shake out in the States. Here, I think that a lot of people are just not going to do it. If the AC doesn't work they may just go ahead and close up and die. And I think that there will be a big wave of um, suicide cults, kind of hopelessness and despair, alcoholism, kind of like the USSR collapse, but perhaps worse here in the States. So I don't know. I think that there will be a wave in the first couple of years of people who are nihilistically kind of giving up. And that's something complicated to prepare for and watch out for.
Yeah, the other thing that plays into it is that, people are choosing. I mean, you said alcohol, but the other issue there's, I think, recreational or narcotics and drugs are just far more prevalent now than they were in the initial hobo culture. I mean, if you look in cities like Portland and sort of the homeless camps that are springing up there, and they seem destitute, and feels like people in those places really fall off the cliff, um, with access to drugs, and maybe it's just an easier way to live out the rest of their days.
Yeah, isn't there? Here's another saying: we would rather be ruined than change. And I also remember, sorry to keep harkening back to Lord Hughes' earlier videos or earlier meetings, he said that even the mere fact that people will be told you can't eat meat because, it causes climate change, um, they're not going to be agreeing to that. And they probably would say they would rather die than not eat meat. I don't know. That's just one trivial piece of info that I remember.
So what are we going to do facing an epidemic of people getting pissed and high and dying in the street? Will we see it? I mean, I'm not going to see it where I am, but okay, it's going. Do you think it's going to be that way in the States, really?
It already is. I mean,
Okay.
collapse is real for the homeless people in Portland, and it's real for the camps that are along like in Sacramento that I've seen, and LA. They're already, none of them have internet, none of them have power. Most of them are high, or they wish they were high. So this is playing out in the States.
Yeah, and I would add that it appears to me to be growing, where I'm at, also in the Northwest. But in addition to this, like what occurred in collapsing Soviet, USSR into Russia, I think that the U.S. I think a lot of that is going to get exercised through violence of some sort, and that's really troubling too.
Yeah, Dmitry Orlov has talked about collapse in the 90s after the Soviet empire melted, and a lot of people died of alcoholism, but he's come straight out, and I think he may have said it in his interview with Lord Hugh, is that people just got shot because there was a lot of street level violence.
But how are those people going to get those drugs when things collapse? When there won't be no anymore traveling people to bring them or labs to make them? When you're going to, I mean, most of even the guys who are on the, what you call it, the OxyContin and all those morphinics, okay, those are pharmaceutical, they're on the street, but they won't be on the street anymore. And all the other, most of the drugs that they're getting in urban areas have to arrive there. They're not produced there. So you're not going to have an epidemic of people high. You're going to have an epidemic of people who are going to go into withdrawal symptoms, and the alcoholics are going to go into DTs. So you're going to have mad people around, because what happens when you stop the drug on someone or the alcohol. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
yeah, that's going to be
It-
even worse.
It's funny, but here in the US, we have this long legacy of government entities importing drugs in order to collapse communities. So I hate to say, but like, importing crack into black neighborhoods across the US or other situations like that is something that, I think that, the elite in this nation have kind of cultivated. And so I kind of wonder if they'll keep that trade up if they have an interest in difficult populations going away. But that's just conjecture, just for fun to say.
Well, some might die of withdrawals, but a lot of them might get out of it and they won't get the drugs anymore. So they'll have to find they're going to wake up. They're going to get out of their stupor. It would be quite interesting to see what happens then. As you said, I know, yeah, I'm perfectly aware that it's a way of destroying. It's a way of, and a lot. It's happening. It's not just happening in the States, but it's more subtle. It's people trying to escape reality. It's very easy. Television, drugs, we know all that. It's just easy. But when the supply is cut, that's going to be a very, they're going to have a big problem on their hands.
Well, again, the tap water and food running out is a way bigger problem. It's like when we talked about this a month or two ago. People were talking about diabetes, other people who need special drugs. It's a tiny problem compared to the fact that you can't get any food in any shop, and the water in your tap is polluted or not cleaned. So keep things in proportions, please.
You are right, of course. Mm-hmm. And which is why coming back to prepping, some basic things like knowing how to make a water filter or how to get some water for yourself and your neighbors, out of basic water filtration with natural things, and again we go back food and stuff like that. Yes, you're absolutely right. But I know, but what I mean is that the deprived people that you both you, Zoo and Confed are describing in cities of the United States are already on the street, and at the moment they're kind of pacified with drugs and alcohol. But when they won't get that, there's going to be another problem. You see, I'm not saying that the food and the water is a problem. It's not important, but that's going to be another problem.
Yep, agreed. And I just feel like it's it's very unpredictable and unstable, but people who are full of desire and hunger, can be directed in any number of ways that are destructive. So yeah, it's just a big mess.
Yeah, I think we will have drugs for a very long time. As long as the general distribution system is still working, as long as there's energy and electricity available, because it's so profitable for the people who do it. So I think you will have a loaf of bread as long as you will have fresh street drugs available, I think, almost to the same day.
As for the other medicines that will start to be short, and we saw what happened during COVID when there was interruption in supply chains and certain antibiotics and other drugs were in shortage in the United States because they were not produced anymore there or in other parts of the world. It's also important to people to start to look at basic medicines and knowing a little bit what to use as painkillers and anti-inflammatories, basic things, disinfection without the use of pharmaceutical. I actually posted something a while ago and I didn't see any comments on it because it's a way of making insulin, basically with pancreas of animals and sort of brewing systems and everything. But it's a kind of a survivalist type of preparation. But I'm very interested in that, because there will be people who are going to die because they won't have any insulin, you know. But as Derek Jensen said, he said that he wouldn't survive because he depends so much on the medical technology and medical drugs, and he's okay with that. He doesn't seem to to think of, uh, alternatives and everything. He's happy to let go of the industrial civilization if it costs his life. He's not too bothered about it, but it depends. But there can be some people who would like to help other people, and those sort of things are useful to know, especially in emergency, especially for pain. I think pain relief, that's very important.
I was going to ask you, Sophie, because let's say if the physical collapse comes more suddenly than people are comfortable with, and you're just thrown out there and you don't know what plants to eat, or even maybe what fish to eat, or whatever, is there a general method you could use if you, let's say, have 10 different leaves or plants, to figure out if they're edible without dying, without anyone in your tribe dying? Is there a way to sort of eat a little bit of it, or is there some kind of general advice that would work no matter where on the planet you live, to find out if a plant you don't know is good or not?
Well, it depends. Yeah, locally, you have to get to know what you have around you, and talk to the older people first, because they what's the ones where I live, they've known harder times. And there's books that tell you all that. I mean, I've got loads here of eating wild edibles, and trial and error is not really a good idea. Everybody who lives near the sea anyway can have seaweed, and there's lots of edible seaweeds, and of course the shells and the crabs and all that. But even if you're not good at that, or if you're a vegetarian, seaweed can provide enormous amount of protein and nutrients for a long time for survival. But yeah, there is loads of books for each geographical area. I couldn't advise what the ones I have, because they're for Ireland and maybe the British Isles. But every country has I'm sure there's even well, I don't know about Greenland, but because I believe that in history, the Europeans who were living in Greenland mostly survived on their meat, and didn't have much farming going on. But I know that there is on the shores of Greenland some type of wild spinach that grows on the beaches in certain seasons, and there's certain low growing greens that are edible too. There is plenty of things to find out, but I wouldn't try them myself. I would look up, because you can have very bad surprises.
Yeah, maybe let
I would-
women and kids try the food first, I guess. LOL.
Yeah. Anyone but yourself. I'm familiar with the process. There's a kind of a procedure if you don't know, where you rub some on your skin, wait 15 minutes to check for a reaction, just taste a little bit on your tongue without ingesting it, wait and see if you have a reaction, then eat a very small amount of it and wait and see if you have a reaction. So there is a kind of procedure that can help you try to figure out plants, but it has blind spots. Like if you have something that damages your liver, well, you may not know till the after effects set in. Or what was it, McCandless from Into the Wild mistook a plant that obstructed his digestive system, so he had no problem eating it for a couple of weeks, but then started to create problems But yeah, mushrooms is tricky. But the thing that concerns me about all that is, these are just not calorically dense foods. Getting the kind of calories you need. That's why folks in Greenland subsisted off animals, and maybe you can find cattail tubers and the kind of things that have enough caloric density to survive. But otherwise, you might be better off eating maple bark or something like that, because just getting enough calories is going to be difficult to find from forest spinach.
That's for sure. But that's for sure. Yeah. But there's proteins in seaweed, and they don't give as much calorie. You're right about the cattails. You're right. But a lot of people don't know anything about what they have around them. You'd be surprised. You'd be surprised if I don't know where you live, but even if you're in a city, if you go in a park or somewhere, you'd be surprised to see the amount of things. And I know some people who do some guerrilla gardening, planting in cities, planting edibles, that mostly roots, but also cabbages and stuff like that. They know where they are, and then they keep them going in public places, and because they don't have gardens, and that would provide you can do urban growing. It's only for a short while, though. Well that you can't really have anything that will sustain a long time. And Going South is saying that we've got tons of kelp and blue mussels. Yeah, if you live near the sea, it's really good. If you that's really a plus. But on the other hand, if there's sea rising and sea level rising, you're going to lose all the shore, and you'll be completely without anything. So there's nothing really that's really good. But to answer your question about identification, I would not even do the little thing on the tongue, because it's better to get your knowledge. I'm not on an app, I'm not on your computer, an old book or something that you've written down and that you're going to keep waterproof and that you have with you. But you have to practice. You have to go out. You have to go out and start identifying stuff. I know somebody who was like you saying, "Oh yeah, we're going to go and get some." So they mistook comfrey. They mistook digitalis for comfrey, and they nearly died because digitalis leaves look alike, but they contain a toxin for the heart, and the comfrey is more or less harmless. So there's lots of plants that look like each other. So you want to get a deep knowledge if you want to start to think in terms of picking, foraging and stuff like that. You have to also think of seasons, because now it's great, you look outside in our hemisphere, everything is green, everything is growing, but then comes the winter, and then what are you going to do? So you have to know your roots as well, and things like that.
Yeah, and I would just say I absolutely agree. And one thing that you said that I really like, I'm in permaculture circles and have friends who are into that, and they are into guerrilla gardening, which is fun. But starting to cultivate a garden just on any patch of land you can find, and it's amazing how so much food can grow in plain sight, and because folks don't recognize it,
Yeah,
people
yeah.
garden whatever patch, and it is largely ignored, which is great.
You don't even have to. Sometimes you can just throw seed balls that you make yourself. You mix your seeds with a bit of compost and a bit of clay, and you make them into little balls, and you throw them wherever you want. It could be on the middle of a motorway, or it can be on a public park, or it can be in a absent neighbor's garden that you can get into. Anything. But seed balls are a good idea because it's not conspicuous. You're not tilling the land and digging and planting and stuff like that. Another thing that's very interesting to plant is perennials. These are plants that you don't need to cultivate anymore. So try varieties of wild cabbage, wild spinach, wild everything, wild leek, wild, all sorts of wild roots that will grow year after year. So you don't need to garden them. You can expand them into other places. I'm doing that. I'm putting some around the little acre I have. I just planting whatever perennial, even of course artichokes and stuff like that, but also Jerusalem artichokes. They're actually invasive, so you want to be careful. But things that will remain in the ground all the time and can grow every year. So there's all sorts. I've got loads and loads of names of perennial plants that I'm really concentrating on. First, because it's easier, and with my age, it's going to become more and more tiring to garden. So I want to rely more on perennials, but also it can be very useful for people who do guerrilla gardening, because some plants look very nice, and some people wouldn't know that they're growing in front of the monument for the veterans of World War I or something. Do you know, it's very funny.
Sophie, you have a French upbringing, haven't you? Because we got like millions and millions of snails on the beaches, but the problem with them is that they are half a centimeter small. Is there any efficient way to actually get to the food if you have to use it as a food source? Because I think you have the same kind of very small snails all over Europe or America, I think.
Well,
Can you boil them or something and make them come out of their shells, or do you have to spend 10 hours per snail or something eating it?
No, you've got the land snails in the country where I grew up in France. Yeah, people eat them. I didn't like them, but the people ate a lot of land snails. Now, near the sea, are you talking about periwinkles? Little tiny little things?
I don't know what they call, but they're inside a shell.
A dark kind of blackish type of things.
No, they're inside a shell of very, very hard carbon or something. So
yeah,
they're
because
very, very small.
all those can be edible. When I was living on the island where I lived first here, we used to go and pick them with the kids. We used to actually, sometimes when we're broke, we could sell them because they're a delicacy. But they're very easy you boil them, and then you use a needle and you take out the thing. And I actually used to make sandwiches with mayonnaise for the kids for their lunch, in their lunchbox. With it. Really nutritious and really tasty. Periwinkle. I think you probably have them. You probably have them in Greenland, on the west coast of Greenland too. They're probably the same. You just need to boil them. You need a fire. You need to boil them. Because eating them raw is a bit cruel, I think, with sticking a needle in them and taking them out. Like, but yeah, I'm still eating them. I eat loads of them.
Great.
They're everywhere. You go down. You go down to the shore. You pick a little bucket. You have not even a bucket, a saucepan, and you have enough for a meal, and it's a very nutritious meal. Yeah. But that again is ocean. The land snails are perfectly edible. I mean, perfect. I know that some nationalities will not go near them, but when it's raining, there's lots of them everywhere. I just don't eat them, but I suppose if I was hungry, I would.
Now, if I was hungry, I would just eat whatever's in front of me. But and this is just an aside, but I've heard about a dangerous bacteria growing in snails found in Hawaii, which is a reason they don't grow lettuce much in Hawaii, because either the bacteria the snail grows is deadly to humans, or it creates a neurotoxin that's deadly to humans. And I've been really worried about that coming ashore on the West Coast too. But if I'm starving to death, I'm going to eat it anyway. So it goes.
Well, talk to a marine biologist in your area, and they will give you. I know a few around here, and they warn you if there's an algae bloom, or if there's something that's coming that's not good, and they kind of observe that, so they know the time. There's times of the years for certain things, and certain seaweeds, and certain shellfish. But I don't know about this, because I'm still in a relatively pristine ecosystem, so I'm not too worried about picking things, But I suppose I don't know I know nothing about the Pacific, nothing. But don't rely on the internet. Have a lot of documents printed or written, or books and good one. Don't accumulate. Have a few good ones. We could actually. It would be a good idea one day on the sub to share a few books that would be. I've actually got one that was given to me that's for the United States, so it's no use to me. I have it here. I'll get it out of my bookshelf. But I've got one simple one, edible food. I think it's wild edible food or something like that. And that's just, I just stick to one thing, simple. But now I've got the habit because I live outside a lot. So I kind of, when I'm walking, I know what's there, and I know, But when I was younger, I used the books to identify and understand because I didn't have an elder to show me. To show me which ones they were, except a few old Irish people. They knew that. They showed me a few seaweeds that were really, really good, and I'm very grateful because that knowledge is getting lost.
Can I just say that I think books are a very good idea, but I think an even better idea would be for you, us, anyone, to go out 1 week and try to find something to eat, either in the sea, like the snails or fish, or plants on land, while we still have a functioning hospital system where we live. Because I think that's a very good dry run. Even if it goes really, really bad, you can just run to the hospital and check yourself out. But it's like at some point, I think most of us realize that we will have to live from stuff outside of the refrigerators in the shop, and trying to do that while there is a hospital and a helping society is a very good idea, because then you kind of have a safety net.
Yeah, but we should make it. It shouldn't be an exceptional thing. I was looking at the letters there: A, Z, G, S, B, R, U, C, D, B, R. I don't know what is the proportion of people who live in urban areas, or are they really far away from the woods or the shore or the countryside? But I mean, or from even big natural parks. And or rivers. But I think spending as much time as you can outside is the best prepping attitude. First for your physical well-being, because the first thing to do in the times that are coming is to be in top form, physical top form. So that means being outside, getting sun or rain, and getting, moving your body and getting it fit and keeping it fit and spending less time in front of a screen. And also starting to look around and knowing what you have around where you live without thinking of escaping to a paradise community and permaculture and the whole thing, but just knowing, okay, like let's say there's this lawn there that's in front of the council building, and there's a few trees there. I can hide a few, I don't know, carrots, parsnips, or cabbage there, or sow a few potatoes, and that's my little plot, that sort of thing. And also walking a lot and exploring a lot makes you it puts you in good form. I mean, you're not thinking about what am I going to do when the shit hits the fan, and am I going to get hungry and everything. You're just out there. And the first prepping strategy, beside the mental preparation and whatever you do, meditation or um, any type of spirituality that you are into, I think the first thing is physical. You need to have a body that's, fit and that you can withstand the weather, the changes, the heat, the cold, the rain, everything. And you have to be outdoors.
Yeah, when you were talking about food availability, I live in a city. It's a small city, but I don't know any plants I can eat. But if I learned how to like fletch arrows and shoot a bow, I could hunt ducks and squirrels and cats.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, yeah, you're right. I have a little slingshot, but I'm learning at the moment to shoot because I'm going to get a more serious gone. Can I say the word on after 2 hours? To go out hunting in the winter for bigger stuff. But yeah, but in a city you can do you can get rats too.
Yeah, I just wanted to give a big shout out. I mean, I love backpacking, and I'm a big fan of bushcraft. Uh, Not in the sense that most people, there's this big weird popular community on the internet and whatever about bushcrafting and it's garbage. But if people just look at the YouTube history of Ray Mears, who's traveled the world studying Aboriginal cultures and how they interact with the land and develop food. Um, Really valuable content there, and based out of the UK, if I recall, it could be really appropriate for a lot of Northern European folks. But Ray Mears has been all over the world and has a long documented kind of history about his interactions with indigenous peoples and learning how to live off the land with them. So it might be an interesting resource, but when I think about gardening and bushcraft and all, the rabbits and the squirrels and the rats who come to eat my produce are also perfect for snares. I think having a slingshot or, 22 or something would be really valuable for small game hunting. But get on your snare and trap work too, because I think that's where, you can get a lot of food, just to mention.
Yeah, thanks for that. The snares also have been on my mind, but sometimes it depends. If you're close to a place where you can put where there's animals you want to catch, it's fine. If you're at a distance, it can be a nuisance. You have to be practical too in terms of transport. You have to be within walking distance of where your snares are, and so it's all a question of where you are. So we started the meeting by wondering what people were doing since we've started the meetings. So I think my big change is that I'm less online, less and less and less online, and more outside. And yeah, and maybe meditating more than it's like, yeah. But other than that, that would be a big difference between the start of the Extinctionati and now.
Are people thinking of people in the city? Are you thinking of moving to a place where it's a little more rural, or are you sticking it out where you are?
Thinking of moving rural, or a small town. I think a small town might be a good idea.
I just can't move, can't afford it. So, I mean, I can't really get too sentimental about that because I did structure my life in a way that where I can have leisure to do art. So, I'm just gonna keep doing that.
Yeah, I think similar to Divine, I don't know if I could afford to move, but I think my situation might be kind of unique, maybe similar to Zoo. I also am in Portland, and as opposed to many other places, and just given how messy the U.S. situation might be, I'm not convinced that moving out of my kind of urban area would be better in my particular situation. just because I'm hoping that something a little more conscious and appropriate would emerge here. But I don't know. I worry about my friends who have taken the idea to move out into the country in parts of the United States, and the political situation out there is really bad. So, I'm not convinced that moving to the country is going to be a safer option in the United States, particularly. But I don't know.
Yeah, do you think that rural situation has to do with the system trying to price those people out and take their property so they can destroy the land? I was going to say develop, but we know what that means. It's Orwellian. It's destroy.
Yeah, I'm actually really concerned about that. If you've seen hedge funds and whatnot buying up farming territory, and there's kind of this could be a whole other conversation. So just briefly, but yeah, if you push people out of the valuable rural land that can still grow food, put a wall around it, defend it, I think that that's part of the strategy for the not so nice people.
Yeah,
Concern.
all they have to do is keep raising your property taxes, and then, that's one of
Yeah.
the ways they do it.
That's an effective way to push people out now. But yeah, the situation in the U.S. is just so messy and unpredictable. I don't know that there's any strategy or direction to turn that I think would be probabilistically safer. So yeah.
Well, in terms of survival, there is in the line also of what Hugh used to say. There's a lot to say about going to sea, and even if you don't have money, I know that there are communities and internet groups and stuff like that who are looking for crew and for people who don't have much knowledge but who are wishing to learn, young, fit, able, not necessarily very young, but fit and able, of course, and who not don't get too seasick, because there is more and more people who are living on boats, whether it's in the States, along the coast, like Dmitry Orlov did at the start. Now he's changed, but all sorts of other people, and Hugh met a few when he was around that were living that way. And very often a man on a boat sometimes needs another person. So there is to be. I remember Ryan pointed me to what was it called? It was a website, and they were called not anarchist pirates. I can't remember. I'll try to remember it. But there's all sorts of. If you do a bit of research on the internet, you'll find some groups and some forums, and they look sometimes for crew. So they advertise and they say, well, I'm looking for a crew going from, I don't know, let's say from New York to the Azores, and I'm going to travel for 6 months, and so yeah, maybe sea stages. I can't remember all these, but I've got them somewhere, so I could post them. And they're a really good option. They're a really, really good option, because there you can go with just your suitcase. You usually don't need money because you are working for you're helping on the boat, So it's a way of survival that I like. No, it's not sea stages. It's another. It's much more. I'll find it. I can't remember. Water World instead of Mad Max. Well, that's what we might have, a Water World, guys. you know.
Well, Waterworld might be better than Mad Max, though.
Yeah. Definitely. Sea shepherds. Oh my God.
Well, I'd certainly rather drink my urine than fight against the roving motor bands.
Mm. Mhm. It's
Yeah,
just
that's one of the funny things about Mad Max. I'm like, how do you guys have gas? There's no global economy.
exactly. How is it extracted? It's just like ridiculous. I never bought that stuff. I mean, No, you can't live on a boat in Greenland. I suppose that might be difficult in the winter, all right. Yeah, that's for sure. But with a boat, you're mobile, so you can change places. You don't have to stay, endure a season. You can just go south a little bit and north again, and everybody's
Yeah,
not like Hugh in Greece, and even there he had to put up with heat and problems. And I know that the sea is getting more and more polluted there, and it's more difficult to get fish, and it's more competition with the fishermen, and it's not all ideal. But at least you're mobile, and you've got a lot of resilience in terms of food, and in terms of authorities. Like you're much more, you're not so much under the radar.
yeah, I think that, considering the road ahead, creating flexibility is super important, flexibility with food sources or flexibility about where you are. And, in this way, boating, you could sail away from danger and hopefully sail to refuge. So yeah, that's an amazing degree of flexibility. It could be valuable.
Well, there's 7 people, I think. No, 1, 2, 3, 7 people on the group who are in, except going south is in Greenland, and I'm in Ireland, and Bob is in England. But so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people in the United States. But I really can't advise you geographically because I don't know anything about the United States. But I remind you that, at the time of Hugh's passing, Andrea, who came on to a couple of meetings and who lives in England, offered to access a place that she has. She's sort of custodian of that place. She lives on the shore, but there's an island, a tidal island, where there is a shack with everything you need and a garden and everything, for people to have a taste of what it is to live alone and survive on, in the wild. And she still has that on offer. Now, of course, for somebody in the United States, it's a bit far to go down to Wales to experiment that, but there's a lot of people who have that possibility. I get people coming here sometimes. I got somebody coming in a week or two who's going to, just a couple, young couple, and in exchange of food and shelter, they're going to do a few jobs for me. So there's no money involved, and it's kind of woofing. But I mean, this is happening all the time around me. Like some people stay for longer. Some people can live. There is a network of people who know that you can drop into that house and you can do work or jobs or cook or whatever, and you'll get, a bed and food and whatever you need, a bit of heat and fire, and those networks exist in. Who's going south? What are you saying? I could be your mother.
Not so secret anymore.
Yeah,
Anyway,
no, that
there are networks that exist in place, that exist for many years, and people start to know the places. You see, if you go to that house, well, normally, you'll, and money is not an issue.
yeah, that talk of those networks kind of remind me of one of the things Hugh was talking about in the debt strike and trying to keep the money economy down, is that people can potentially form like anarchist guilds of mutual aid. That'd be pretty cool.
But you don't need to form them. They nearly spontaneously happen, and they've been happening for a long time, because there was the surfers, for example, who travel a lot. They had this couch surfing thing, where they were going to a house, and then it extended. It became much bigger than that. Then it became a bit corporate, so you can throw it out in the bin. But then there's all sorts of other organizations like HelpX, Woofers. There's another one I can't remember, Workaway, or things like that have absolutely nothing to do with money. You go to, and I had actually here, when I was building the house, when I was doing it, I got help from 2 women who were coming from Alaska, because I found them online and they wanted to spend 2 weeks in Ireland, and they didn't have much money. So they said, we come and help you. We'll do a bit of work, and they get a bed and a meal. And that's still happening. Now, it was interrupted a lot during the COVID because those things got very hit, but there's still people who do that. And if you look around, and you can ask me, I mean, I've got lots of contacts with organizations like that.
Yeah, that kind of reminds me of so when I was volunteer working at that wolf sanctuary, that's what I got. I went and I stayed. They gave me a room and they fed me, but man, I worked my butt off. Yep. Yeah, I mean, it was a good experience and all, but wow. Yeah, that's cool that they do that. Yeah. Um
Well, usually the code for woofers and helpex is usually 4 hours a day. But you can also do a whole day and go off another day. You know, it's roughly corresponds to the bed and the food. And some people make different arrangements, and it depends on the type of jobs that you'll do. Is it going to be out gardening, or is it going to be building or carpentry, or it's all different thing. But it's something that's negotiated between people, and there's again no money involved. It's just a question of how much are you ready to commit to help the person you're staying with, and you know, and
oh yeah, for sure.
yeah, and same with the duration. Some people come for a few weeks, some people can stay for a year. You know, it's just talking about what Confed was saying about flexibility. When you are young and you can travel, and you don't have to travel far if you have, you know, a network, that's another way of living quite well. You know.
Yeah, I mean the reason why I worked so hard there though is because it was 27 wolves on the property and it was just me and the other guy taking care of all of them. So that's why they were understaffed because you know they don't have money to pay people and most people are not willing to do that work because you have to you know get your hands dirty prepping their meals, which is raw meat, and then cleaning up their pens and all that and building and repairing fences and I guess most people.
I can't hear you anymore. You've gone
Yeah,
offline.
I lost Divine. I was wondering if y'all worked so hard because if you didn't feed the wolves, you might become their food.
Oh, maybe. You never
Had a
know.
friend had a friend who worked on a wolf sanctuary. Sounds very similar. But you know, this, you know, your comment reminded me. It made me think of, you know, the way that this is going to be emergent and become more dominant. You know, is that there's, you know, increasingly there's going to be a lot more desperate people. I mean, we're seeing it already. Um, and I think that from this, you know, some fraction of that will emerge in this kind of mutual aid, anarchistic, woofer kind of thing, which is fantastic. And I'm a little worried about the near-term behavior pattern in the U.S. because the thing that is so common here is to take advantage of people who are desperate. So, you know, of course, you work really, really hard. I mean, they're, you know, fortunately, we know who to look for and what fair treatment is. But I think there's going to be a lot of folks trying to put people under them and take advantage of them because of their desperation. So, you know, maybe that's more localized, but that's also something to watch out for, the flip side of this coin.
Yeah, for sure. And you know, it's gonna be kind of a reckoning because you know, people in the West and America and stuff are so used to this high standard of living, but it's like you can really live with way less than what we have. Um, but I guess that's gonna be hard because people have to let go of illusions and stuff, and that's gonna be the most difficult part. I think letting go of all the illusions that people have been inculcated into is going to cause most of the suffering.
Yeah, like Anish said, we'd rather be ruined than change. These people would rather, you know, die with society than not elevate themselves by taking advantage of others.
Yeah, it's like it kind of reminds me of, you know, the whole Joseph Campbell hero's journey. Like it seems that like when most people get the call to adventure, they just, you know, take another drink at the bar and they just take another drink until they totally forget and it's like, yeah, I'm not going anywhere. It's too scary.
Well, it's a good thing to get scared.
Yeah, it is. It's one of those what do you call it? The getting sensitized. Like a couple months ago, I went to the park in the middle of the night and meditated. I was the only one there, and yeah, scary shit can happen, psychically speaking. But yeah.
You should tell us about that one day.
Oh yeah, I will. It was under the full moon. I was under my tree. I have this tree at the park I like. And yeah, it was kind of scary. You kind of get goosebumps on your back. You kind of think that something's going to lunge out and get you.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It's so healthy to have a good sense of fear. You know, again, this aligns with the alien cortex and all this stuff. But there's this great book I've been meaning to read, which is Where the Wild Things Were. I think about my time backpacking in grizzly country and having a reasonable, rational fear of of wilderness and all that it entails is humbling and beautiful.
Yeah, but it's very difficult. You know, when you started talking, I was thinking about bears immediately when you started talking, and I've